Welcome. I'm Sean Farrell, Head of Digital Assets at Fundstrat and FSInsight. We'd like to welcome all of our clients to this special webinar. Hope everyone's enjoying our first green candle in what seems like 8 years. Today, we're excited to bring you our second webinar with one of our beloved clients in Swan Bitcoin. Our clients know that we cover the whole digital asset landscape, but our clients also know that Bitcoin is unique and we view it as a unique asset insofar as it instantiates the properties of hard money that no other digital asset is able to do. And over time, we've discussed, we expect this asset, although it's correlated, with the Qs currently, we expect it to evolve and become risk off and potentially take away market share from other risk off assets, say gold, real estate, bonds, etc. With that in mind, there's a demand in the market for a partner to usher financial advisors into the Bitcoin space, where Bitcoin clearly already serves a key purpose and a key part of a well-rounded portfolio. And in a time when the digital asset space is looking for an adult in the room, in my opinion, Swan Bitcoin has done an excellent job of stepping up and trying to fill that need for an adult in the market. And with that, I'd like to introduce Andy Edstrom, Managing Director of Swan Advisor Services. He is leading the charge on this initiative. Andy's a Wall Street veteran and a published author on the topic of Bitcoin. And he's going to take you through Swan Advisor Services. Andy.
All right. Thank you, Sean. I am really excited to talk to you today about Swan Advisor Services. This product's been a long time in the making, and this is quite a moment for Swan. But first, before I get into Swan Advisor Services, I just want to do a little bit quickly on my background. And I am going to do a screen share, and here we go. Okay, so I think Sean mentioned I started my career on Wall Street. I did investment banking at Goldman Sachs. Then I worked briefly for a private equity fund that spun out of the Carlyle Group. And then I spent about 5.5 years investing for a multi-billion-dollar hedge fund located in LA called Tenenbaum Capital that was subsequently acquired by the world's largest asset manager, BlackRock. So that was the first decade of my career. Second decade of my career, I decided to join and help grow my family's business, which is wealth management. So I became a financial advisor. I picked up the CFA and CFP credentials, and I got to work building that business. In the late summer of 2017, I found digital assets, and I bought a bunch of different digital assets, including Bitcoin. Then, as you probably know, that bubble popped in 2018. And that was the time that I realized that Bitcoin was the thing to focus on. So it was at the market bottom in early 2019, when Bitcoin was a little over $3,000, that I started writing the book that Sean mentioned. It's called Why Buy Bitcoin. And I started writing that book partly to test my investment thesis in Bitcoin, and partly to educate my friends and family, and partly to educate my clients, because I was pretty sure by then that Bitcoin was going to play a role in their overall portfolios. And I thought it was really important to help them understand why that was going to be the case. So I published the book in September 2019, and I heard about Corey Clipston, CEO of Swan, about a month later, and I sent him a copy, and that's how I found Swan. Soon after that, having spent almost a decade in wealth management as a financial advisor, I realized that incorporating Bitcoin into financial advisors' portfolios was still an unsolved problem. Yes, there were some products in the market already, but they all had major problems. So late last year, I decided to join the Swan team to launch the product that solves those problems. And I'm very happy to say we are now launching that product. It's called Swan Advisor Services, and I'm really excited to present it to you today. So before I talk to you about Swan, I'd like to start with a problem that Bitcoin solves for investors. So Bitcoin solves various problems for users all over the world, but the key problem that it solves for investors is its limited supply and its role as a hard money asset. So at the moment, as you know, the Fed is desperately trying to crush the consumer price index, trying to crush demand in the economy in order to contain CPI. And this, of course, comes on the heels of vast amounts of money printing after the pandemic. So will they succeed and bring inflation down to their 2% target? It's possible, but honestly, I doubt it. And that's for a number of reasons. First, we have the high government deficit spending, which has been ongoing for as long as I can remember, but it's frankly accelerated in recent years and doesn't look like it's going to decelerate. We have the ongoing supply chain problems and the long-term reversal of globalization. We have demographics, which are taking labor out of the labor force and putting upward pressure on wages. And of course, the overall level of debt in the economy, both in the US and globally, is near or at record highs. Now, considering that inflation is politically the easiest route out of the debt problem, it's looking pretty likely that the 2020s will be an inflationary decade. Maybe sometimes CPI will be 8%, maybe sometimes it'll be 4%, but overall, the average seems likely to be well above the Fed's target. So what might this look like for a diversified investment portfolio that financial advisors are running for their clients? Well, the last inflationary decade that we saw was the 1970s. That's a period in which bonds did terribly, stocks performed poorly, real estate did okay, but real estate prices started at much lower levels than they are at today. There was one asset, the world's preferred hard money asset, that saw its price rise by over 30% a year in nominal terms and over 20% a year in real terms in that period. And that asset, of course, was gold. Now, gold will probably perform well this decade, but now there's another hard money asset that's taking market share from gold and therefore is likely to significantly outperform gold. So you guessed it, that asset is Bitcoin. Most of you watching today will already have heard the investment case for Bitcoin before, but it's probably worth framing our view here at Swan. So over the coming decade, we see the price of a single Bitcoin hitting 7 figures in dollar terms, or roughly 50 times its current price. That number comes from several asset classes. Sean mentioned a few of those, and we see Bitcoin taking market share from those asset classes. So obviously the low-hanging fruit is gold. Without getting into the details of the analysis here, we think Bitcoin is a better hard money asset than gold, and that it will take significant market share from gold, maybe 30% over the course of a decade. But there are other ways for Bitcoin to accrue value. As the infrastructure and transactional layers continue to get built on top of the Bitcoin base layer, we see Bitcoin taking share from base money as well as the greater money supply, which includes bank deposits and bank loans. Bonds and fixed income markets are another major category that Bitcoin's likely to take share from, especially as long as real interest rates are negative. That is to say, as long as inflation outpaces nominal rates on US Treasuries. Over the longer term, we even see Bitcoin taking a modest amount of market share from equities and real estate. Part of that is due to equities and real estate serving some store of value function. And part is due to the fact that many young people are frankly more interested in buying Bitcoin than they are in buying stocks. So if Bitcoin reaches its potential this decade, it may be the best performing major asset in clients' portfolios. By the way, we think the primary reason for this potential high performance is the current gap between Bitcoin's fundamental characteristics and investors' understanding of those characteristics. Basically, most investors have not yet figured out what Bitcoin is. That knowledge gap, we think, will close with time. And at Swan, we're doing our part to see that that happens. And we think that'll likely send the price of Bitcoin much higher. And even if Bitcoin doesn't reach its full potential and only takes significant market share from gold this decade, investors still stand to realize annualized returns of over 20%. Not bad. Of course, none of this upside potential comes without risks. In fact, I filled over 40 pages with those risks in my book. Nevertheless, Bitcoin still offers the best risk-adjusted return that I've seen in my 20-year career. And yet, Bitcoin has almost no presence in the portfolios of financial advisors' clients. I think that's because nobody's built the right product yet for both financial advisors and their clients. And I also think that Swan Advisor Services is that product. So I want to touch briefly on regulation. Increased regulation of digital assets is coming. And this is actually a big positive for Bitcoin. That's because Bitcoin's a commodity and most other digital assets are securities. You shouldn't take my word for it. I'm not a securities lawyer, but it is worth listening to the securities regulators themselves on this topic. And they've been pretty clear. Just a few weeks ago, SEC Chair Gary Gensler went on CNBC and stated that Bitcoin was the only digital asset that he was willing to admit was clearly a commodity and by implication, not a security. So the guy in charge of enforcing securities regulation in the US has differentiated between Bitcoin on the one hand and other digital assets, really all other digital assets on the other hand. And one implication of this for financial advisors is that exposure to digital assets other than Bitcoin introduces compliance risk to the advisor in the form of recommending unregistered securities. So we at Swan, and also many of the advisors that we've talked to, think this makes a strong case for offering a Bitcoin-only service to advisors and their clients, and that's exactly what we're doing. So let's talk about the options that financial advisors face today for including Bitcoin in their clients' portfolios. Bitcoin's been around for over 13 years now, and by now there are a number of vehicles for getting clients exposure to Bitcoin. But these existing options each have significant deficiencies. You see, Bitcoin was designed to be the ultimate bearer asset and pristine collateral asset. Yet none of these existing options takes full advantage of Bitcoin's unique properties. Swan Advisor Services fixes this. Instead of offering a fund and all the shortcomings that come with that, our solution delivers outright Bitcoin ownership. Our solution allows for active management strategies, as well as standard rebalancing and tax loss harvesting. The tax loss harvesting is actually especially interesting because since the client owns the asset outright, instead of owning a security, they're not subject to the wash sale rule. So if an advisor buys Bitcoin for a client and the price falls, they can sell, crystallize the loss, and then immediately rebuy without having to wait 30 days and thereby maintain investment exposure to the asset while creating that tax loss asset as well. So this is a really useful option, and it's actually something we've already been doing with our existing clients in our private client service division at Swan. We also offer the ability to withdraw Bitcoin to self-custody and multi-signature custody. And we think that in the long run, advisors can play a critical role in multi-generational planning for their clients based on those features. And then our custody arrangement keeps clients' Bitcoin out of risky activities like prime brokerage or lending or rehypothecation of any kind. And lastly, our solution minimizes tracking error to the price of Bitcoin since the client actually owns Bitcoin. So the bottom line here is there are a lot of benefits to clients owning actual outright Bitcoin, and that's what Swan Advisor Services delivers. Now, I'd like to add some more detail around the package that Swan's bringing to the table. So there's no getting around the fact that Bitcoin's hard to understand. Honestly, it takes hours of research just to scratch the surface. This means that the single most important tool for integrating Bitcoin into the diversified portfolios that financial advisors run for their clients is actually education. That's why at Swan, we focus so heavily on education. I'm personally a great example of this educational focus. I reached out to our CEO, Corey, a month after publishing Why Buy Bitcoin, which I think is still the only book on Bitcoin published by a financial advisor. But I'm just one of many Bitcoin educators here at Swan who continue to generate fantastic content, through multiple channels that we publish through multiple channels that you can see here on this page. So this is just a sampling of the educational content that Swan produces, which we've harnessed both for the benefit of financial advisors and for their clients. I really want to underscore that our team of Bitcoin educators has already created more useful content on Bitcoin than any other team in the industry, but we're also continuing to do so. And moreover, our team is available to advisors and their clients any way that advisors want to take advantage of us as a resource. So if advisors want to ask us questions about Bitcoin risk factors, that's great. We're happy to do that. If advisors want to put us in touch directly with their clients to answer their questions, that's something we've done before, and we're happy to do that too. Basically, we're here to provide financial advisors with the single best source of Bitcoin information in the world and the ability to use it in whatever way is most helpful to them and their clients. Now, we already regularly publish market commentary and big picture macroeconomic content that's already getting sent to both our private clients and is also getting syndicated through third-party research outlets such as Hedge and our friends at Fundstrat, like we're doing today. But we're also building out an institutional grade research platform, and you'll see even more top quality research coming out of Swan for the benefit of advisors and their clients going forward. Okay, this is the technology and product stack for Swan Advisor Services. Now, some players in the Bitcoin market are vertically integrated. We've taken the opposite approach because it allows each provider in the stack to specialize and deliver its piece, just the piece that they do best. So this has allowed us to partner with best-in-class providers, yet provide a boutique experience that's also backed by high-grade, institutional-grade infrastructure. So at the top sits Swan. Our focus is on creating a great experience for financial advisors and their clients. That's what we're best at. And the Swan Advisor Services user experience that I'm going to show you a bit later will give you a sense of that. Below Swan sits Prime Trust, which is a regulated custodian by virtue of being a state chartered trust company. As custodian, Prime Trust is the regulated entity that holds segregated accounts on behalf of clients, including those of financial advisors who use Swan Advisor Services. Now, Prime Trust recently raised over $100 million in new equity, partly to expand exactly the kind of business that they're doing with us at Swan. At the base of the stack sits Fireblocks. Fireblocks is the actual holder and manager of the private key material, and it's one of the most reputable managers of private keys in the world. Fireblocks raised $550 million this year at a valuation of $8 billion, and they manage Bitcoin private keys for many other well-known exchanges and custodians of Bitcoin. Okay, just a few words on the leadership team here at Swan Advisor Services. So Swan, the overall company, now has about 60 employees, and about a quarter of those are either fully or partially dedicated to our service for financial advisors. I already touched on my bio, but I do want to highlight other members of our team. So Ryan has spent his entire career in the securities industry, providing services to management teams, financial advisors, and investors. Guy was most recently at Bridgewater, the world's biggest hedge fund. And of course, Corey's experience includes management positions at various blue chip companies, including Google, McKinsey, Morgan Stanley, and Microsoft. We also have a pretty deep bench of professionals who cover high net worth and ultra high net worth clients for Swan's private client business, and they also support Swan Advisor Services. I honestly think we have the best team in the industry, and we've continued to expand our team and upgrade it even through the current bear market in Bitcoin. So just to bring us home, financial advisors who use Swan get access to the world's best education and research, including support from Swan's team of experts. They get a beautiful and easy to use interface, which we're going to show you, that allows them to do what they need to do for their clients, including seamless onboarding, buying, selling, rebalancing, and tax loss harvesting. That interface will integrate with their reporting and billing software via API integrations with the major portfolio management software platforms like Black Diamond, Orion, Adipar, and Tamarack, and others. With Swan, advisors get and their clients get deep liquidity and great trade execution, and clients get safe storage of the asset by a world-class custodian and manager of private keys. We also support advisors creating self-custody frameworks for their clients. The advisor dashboard will provide visibility into on-chain Bitcoin storage such that advisors can continue to report on and manage clients' Bitcoin positions, whether custodied on platform or held in self-custody. And then finally, over time, we'll be rolling out collaborative custody solutions for advisors who want to play a role in private key management for their clients. So just to wrap up, nobody else in the market is delivering the Bitcoin solution that we are for financial advisors and their clients. I'm really proud of the interface, the user experience that we've created, and I'm excited to show it to you. And then afterwards, we'll take some questions. So Sean, can we run that demo?
Welcome to the Swan Advisor Services dashboard. This screen here is what an advisor is greeted with upon login. At the top is an overview of the advisor's basic account information and statistics. This advisor already has 11 clients on the platform, and information for each of these clients can be found in the table below. By clicking on a client's row, the advisor will see more details of this particular client. The client's contact and account details, balances, performance statistic, as well as a downloadable Prime Trust statement are found here. The table on this page is a record of all purchases, deposits, sales, and withdrawals for this particular client. At any point in time, the advisor can add a new client onto the platform by clicking the Add New Client button. There are two types of accounts that a client can have, discretionary and non-discretionary, the difference being whether the advisor has authorization to trade Bitcoin on the client's behalf. To create a discretionary account, an advisor can choose whether to have a client independently create their Swan account, or to create an account on the client's behalf. The latter option will involve the advisor entering the client's information, as well as uploading required documents. This identity verification process will take up to 24 hours, but will often be much faster. Once an account is submitted, the client will receive an email instructing them to verify the account creation, which involves reviewing and agreeing to a Prime Trust custodial agreement, as well as verifying their phone number. As the advisor waits for the client to activate their account, their client will show up in a pending account status on their dashboard. As soon as the activation and approval are complete, the status is updated and the advisor is now able to buy, sell, add funds, and connect a bank account for this client. All that is needed to buy Bitcoin for a client is to input a USD amount, select a payment method, and confirm the transaction. Once the purchase goes through, the dashboard is updated with the client's new balances, and the transaction is added to the history table. Last but not least, advisors can export a CSV of all of their clients' balances. Eventually, we will also have API integrations with native portfolio management tools so that advisors can view their Swan account positions alongside other assets that they manage.
All right, that was sleek, Andy.
Thanks, Sean. Looks pretty good, right?
Yeah, I'd say whatever you're paying your devs, it's not enough. No, that was great, and I think the demo is super helpful to put the product into context. So appreciate that. Yep. Very good overview. So now I guess if you have time, we'd love to run through some questions. I have some of my own, and we have some Q&A from the audience as well.
Yeah, of course. Let's do it.
Great. So I guess let's start at the top. That's just, I know your job isn't necessarily covering the markets, but, obviously as an educational resource, advisors are going to come to you for your thoughts on what's going on in the market. So I guess, what are your thoughts right now? How would you go about articulating what's happened lately in Bitcoin and digital assets overall?
Yeah. So happy to talk about it, Sean. And obviously nobody's better at that than Fundstrat. But to be honest, we do publish lots of content on current state of the markets, including Bitcoin and macro, for existing customers. And we're going to be doing even more of that for advisors going forward. So undoubtedly, it's been rough times lately for digital assets. We had the Terra Luna unwind, which Swan's CEO Corey actually called in advance or warned about in advance. That vaporized about $60 billion worth of assets, and Bitcoin got caught in that selling pressure. Then we saw several other levered entities buckle under the pressure. Celsius and Voyager halted customer withdrawals. They've since declared bankruptcy. And then Three Arrows Capital, which had almost a $20 billion balance sheet, is getting liquidated as we speak. By the way, especially for the Three Arrows debacle, I recommend people check out funds research on that topic. So all these insolvent entities were forced to liquidate Bitcoin if they owned it directly, as well as there were other entities, that had exposure to these insolvent entities, and many of those guys liquidated Bitcoin or as they took their gross exposure down. So all this put downward pressure on the price of Bitcoin. Anyway, despite the price drop, it's actually times like these that we think Bitcoin shines relative to the rest of the digital asset space. First of all, through all the mayhem, the Bitcoin network continues to clear billions of dollars of transactions on a daily basis. So it just keeps chugging along. And then second, one of the topics I talked about before is we can be sure regulation is coming. I mean, it was already coming. Now it's for sure coming in the wake of everything that's happened in the last few months. And that's actually great for Bitcoin because Bitcoin is pretty clearly the only asset that the SEC chair himself is willing to say is a commodity and not a security. So long run, we're bullish on Bitcoin. We don't call bottoms, but we do think that now is an attractive time to be accumulating Bitcoin, especially for the long term. And we think it's a good time for advisors to get their clients into Bitcoin.
We could not agree more with that statement there. And I swear I wasn't fishing for compliments either. No, that's great. And, to your point, it's absolutely true. Software, which is what Bitcoin network is, it's more inoculated to, the human condition, which tends to lean towards leverage and, unnecessary risk, so to speak.
Well said.
Cool. Is Swan onboarding right now? I know it's early, but are you taking on clients at this time?
Yeah, so we've been doing live demos of the platform, like the one you just saw, with financial advisors, and the feedback's been really positive. We've had conversations with over 70 firms this year, financial advisory firms, and we have a committed group of about 10 early adopters who we expect to onboard by the end of next month. So yeah, we've been pleasantly surprised at how many advisors out there are focused on Bitcoin only rather than dicier digital assets. And we think we're uniquely well suited to serve this market. And yeah, we're going to be doing it so, imminently, basically within the next month. So if you're interested, please contact us at swan.com/advisor, or you can get to me or Ryan directly. I'm Andy at swan.com and Ryan is Ryan at swan.com.
Great. That's awesome. And what types, apologies if you already mentioned this, but what types of accounts do you offer?
Yeah, so we offer all the major account types that financial advisors and their clients need. So that includes taxable accounts, trust accounts, operating business accounts, IRA accounts, and Roth IRA accounts. Pretty much we cover the usual suspects there.
Very cool. Very cool. And so a common advice for people that aren't in the markets when it comes to Bitcoin is, if you understand the thesis, the best course of action in terms of portfolio management is to dollar cost average. Is that something that I know you offer that on the individual user end of things? Is this a service you're going to offer to financial advisors?
Yeah, absolutely. One of the features, not the bugs, but the features, as you know, of Bitcoin is its price volatility, which makes it an ideal asset for dollar cost averaging. And so basically advisors have the option with our product. Advisors that just want to make the buy sell decision, want to trade it actively, or have their own rebalancing programs in place, they can do it that way. But we do offer dollar cost averaging for advisors that want to elect it on behalf of their clients in case they want to build a long-term sort of strategic position in Bitcoin, which of course they can transact and trade around as well if they choose.
Got it. Very cool. And can you tell us more about the fee structure? What is that comprised of?
Yeah, of course. So we're among the low-cost providers of Bitcoin services to financial advisors and their clients. We charge 30 basis points per transaction and then we charge 100 basis points annually. We think this makes us more attractive, first of all, than a lot of the existing options in the market and other providers, given our feature set, especially, and then especially given our unparalleled educational content with resources focused exclusively on Bitcoin. Taken together, we think this product is more attractive than the other ones on the market, but also it's more attractively priced, honestly, than most alternative assets in clients' portfolios.
Got it. That's helpful. I think either you or I had mentioned how Bitcoin is this, it's this pristine collateral, right? It is hard money, but better, right? And it's hard money in software form. So naturally, and this already goes on in some DeFi applications and elsewhere, but similar to how people want to borrow with using their portfolio as collateral, will users be able to set up borrowing and lending using Bitcoin as collateral using Swan?
Yeah, that's a great question, Sean. So Swan Advisor Services safely custodies Bitcoin, and the Bitcoin is not subject to prime brokerage or lending out or rehypothecation. Okay. However, the fact is that since it's actual Bitcoin, there is future optionality, as you implied, from borrowing against Bitcoin or generating yield with Bitcoin. So we're very early in the evolution of these markets, which we've clearly seen given the recent action in the last few months. So, we do expect it to be an opportunity for advisors and their clients in the future, but it's probably going to take years for those markets to develop. And so we're in a position where when the time is right, we can provide access to these solutions when they're safe. And in the meantime, we offer safe, unlevered custody of Bitcoin for advisors and their clients.
Great. On that note, I'm thinking through this. I know your individual service allows consumers to transfer, self-custody Bitcoin or Bitcoin on another exchange to Swan. Is this a function that would be available to clients of advisors that want to just consolidate their portfolio into one home, so to speak?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is the funny world we're living in, right? Is up until this point, the Bitcoin solutions that advisors can reasonably take advantage of, have had a lot of problems with them. So they haven't been adopted en masse. And yet clients have on their own realized that Bitcoin is an opportunity. And so they've been taking it upon themselves to go accumulate it, separate from their advisors. But there's a lot of those clients out there that want their advisors to consider Bitcoin as an overall part of their diversified portfolio. So it doesn't make a lot of sense for clients to have this outside pot and then advisors sort of be in the dark about that. So yeah, we have already seen interest from both clients and advisors about taking assets that the client may have on the side held away, right? And consolidating them into their overall portfolio. And absolutely, Swan Advisor Services accommodates that.
Great. Yeah, because I could imagine that could actually be a headwind, right? If you weren't able to do that, because naturally, if you own a significant amount of Bitcoin, it's likely that you bought it a while ago and might not want to pay capital gains. And so being able to make that transfer is quite useful.
Absolutely.
What is the current process for onboarding clients look like? I don't know if it's been formalized or maybe like a turnaround time. How does that look?
Yeah. So it's already pretty streamlined. The key player other than Swan is Prime Trust, and they're great about doing rapid turnaround on opening accounts. So they have a very streamlined process. We've set it up so that there's options here. So the advisor can invite the client. The client gets basically a direct invitation, few clicks, approves the account. So the advisor can set it up so that it's so basically the client has, or excuse me, Prime Trust has the information that's needed from the client. I mean, or, they have the option of sending an invite where the client inputs information, whichever they choose. And then, it's rapid turnaround. I mean, it's generally 24 hours. It's sometimes less even to open an account. And so, it's fast. It's pretty seamless. And there's actually several options that the advisor can elect in terms of how they want to invite or engage with the client and get them onto the platform.
Got it. That's helpful. In terms of geography, is Swan available nationwide? Or I guess,
yes, although
advisor services.
Well, yeah, we're available nationwide. We're actually available in multiple countries. The one current exception to that is New York, within the continental U.S., right? Because of the bit license issue. But other than that, yes, we are available in the U.S. and a number of foreign countries as well.
It never fails to amaze me how much talent in the industry is here, even though it is like the the worst place in the world for crypto and Bitcoin. It's just the least friendliest place to start a digital assets business, and it's wild, quite frankly. So hopefully that changes soon. But
yeah, it's got to be network effect, right? I mean, it's the legacy financial industry is based in New York, and so this competitor is coming at it. Hence a lot of people located still in that nerve center of finance. That's pretty sticky.
Yeah. You mentioned what other countries?
Oh man, I'm the wrong guy to list them all. It's too long. Okay. It's too long a list, but we can definitely follow up. Okay. Yeah.
Got it. Okay. Any minimums for advisor accounts?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. And that's one of the features, to be honest. Our approach to this situation is if you're an advisor and you've got clients, probably more than one of them will want Bitcoin. And so, very rarely is it going to be uneconomic, for us to provide service to an advisor, because our assumption is that advisor is going to want to have several clients that want to onboard. So yeah, we're very flexible. We do not have a minimum size either at the client level individually or at the advisor level. I mean, I think it's fair to say that, if you're an advisor and you've got a practice, but even among all your accounts in aggregate, you're not looking at buying at least 6 figures of Bitcoin, that's probably not worth the time. But if you are looking to buy that amount, in aggregate for clients, then yeah, we would love to talk to you, and there's no minimum.
Cool. That's great. It's helpful. And you mentioned this, have a couple questions from the audience that have brought up tax loss harvesting, which I think is worth double clicking on, because you think about, down the road, what are the competitors? Think at some point there will be a spot ETF, but that is, it will be a security traded on an exchange that is not actual Bitcoin, right? So this is like one of the key attributes of using Swan. So maybe could you maybe just describe how tax loss harvesting would work mechanically, either at a high level or granular, to either degree you'd like to explain it?
Yeah, of course. So advisors are well familiar with the concept of tax loss harvesting, in the sense that, okay, you've got some asset, it's gone down in price since you bought it for your client, and maybe you still want the exposure, so you swap out of the asset you bought them and you buy something else that's similar. Or maybe you don't want the exposure and you just want to cut it. That loss that's realized, of course, can be deducted against any gains that are realized in the portfolio. And by the way, you can actually flow, I think it's $3,000 of losses through ordinary income as well. But there's the wash sale rule, right? So if you want to keep exposure to an asset, but you want to realize the tax loss, but you want to swap back into that asset, you can't do it if you can't do it unless you sell it stay out of it for at least a month. I think it's actually 31 days, and then rebuy it, right? You can't rebuy it immediately. Okay, Bitcoin is different as a commodity. And okay, disclaimer, right? Like, I'm not a tax lawyer, but my understanding is that you can actually sell, realize the loss, and immediately rebuy. So you maintain the exposure to the asset, but you crystallize that loss. So that's a very cool feature that Bitcoin offers. You cannot get that with any security that is, offering Bitcoin exposure, but is effectively a security. Bitcoin Trust is an obvious example of that, but there are others. And so, yeah, it's definitely a cool feature that's available with Bitcoin. And specifically, we're set up to do it actually at Swan, essentially instantaneously, right? So it's like,
oh, great.
You do the sell and the rebuy, and so you avoid price slippage. And we know that Bitcoin's a pretty volatile asset, so it's not great if you hit the sell button and then a few seconds pass by and you rebuy and you get a worse price. Often it works in your favor, but you just never know. So yeah, at Swan, we're set up basically to minimize that slippage and get the rebuy more or less immediately after the sell.
Great. I think that's a huge feature, and also want to pass on a disclaimer that I'm also not a tax expert, but do recommend that clients look into tax loss harvesting and the wash sale with Bitcoin, because it's another unique feature of the asset. So Andy, that's all the questions that I have, and most of the audience questions. I guess now I'll give the floor to you to maybe give some closing remarks and wrap things up. And before we sign off, first just want to thank you for joining, and this was a great presentation. Also want to make the disclaimer, we've made this known in our research and in our prior webinar that Tom Lee, our managing partner, is an investor in Swan Bitcoin, a minority investor. So we certainly want to make that disclosure widely known. So we appreciate our partnership with Swan, and with that, I'll turn it to you, Andy, and let you take us home.
Yeah, thank you, Sean. We appreciate this as well. Really appreciate you taking the time and introducing us to your audience. And yeah, it's been a pleasure talking. Anyone who's interested in the audience in Swan Advisor Services, whether you're a financial advisor yourself, or you have one, or one, please contact us about Swan Advisor Services. It's swan.com/advisor, or you can get me directly, Andy@swan.com, or you can get my colleague Ryan. He's Ryan@swan.com. So thanks again, Sean. Really appreciate it. Everything from you and from Fundstrat, and we'll leave it there.
Great. Thanks, Andy.